Hello, Mohammed. Are you okay?
Yes, hello. Yes, I'm fine. You can hear me, right? My voice is
Hi,
clear.
Mohammed.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
We
Very
missed
well,
you last
thank
Very
week.
you.
good.
Well, just a slight cold, which is par for the course if you live in this country.
Is it getting colder there for you, Mohammed?
Yes, it's more colder than.
What's the temperature at the moment?
Yeah, I'm not sure about how much it's right now, but it's cold enough to wear
It's,
a jacket right now.
yeah, it's about 11 degrees here. Yeah, so yeah, Chris is wearing his woolly jumper.
I am.
This is okay.
Yeah, yes.
Got the heating on as well.
Yeah. So Mohammed, what's going on at the moment? So what's new compared with 2 weeks ago?
So the Israeli army, they are still working on the north of Gaza city. It's in the north of Gaza Strip in general. What seems look like right now, they are attacking Jabalia and Beit Lahia, especially in Jabalia, block after block. Um, it's very clear right now that they are trying to make the whole city, Jabalia city, empty from the people, as they are trying to build settlements there, as it used to be many years ago. There's many crimes happening there. Unfortunately, not everything is documented because there is no internet, there is no electricity there. There's the connection with the people there is very poor. But the videos, the images that we received, is very scary about what's happening there. They are trying to destroy everything that can help the people to survive there. Of course, there is no food, there is no water, and it's the situation there is very miserable. It's very scary. The the news about the people who will be murdered di- directly by the army is it's like the whole situation is like, I can say, if I can say, it's like the whole war is something, and what's going right now in Jabalia is a different something else. It's be more difficult, more massacres having there, the buzz in the streets, as like more worse than before, more worse than happening in this war until now. And it seems like we are going to a new level of this war, as I'm scared that Gaza, it will be like in the past. Like there is no Gaza in the future. Is if they success in their planning, or what they are doing right now of making the people go out and then steal the places, then bomb scars, make settlements. Because if this happen and success in Jabalia, it's mean it will be in the whole Gaza Strip. So after Jabalia, they will go to Beit Lahia, Beit Hanun, Gaza, and then the south of Gaza Strip, Nusayrat, and then the Deir al Balah, and then the Rafah, and then the whole Gaza Strip. And I'm sure if this happen, it will not stop in Gaza Strip. It will be in the West Bank. It will not stop in the West Bank and Gaza Strip and the whole Palestine. It will be more in Egypt, more in Jordan, more in Syria, more in Lebanon. It will be something like no one actually wish to live to see this.
Okay. Thank you, Mohammed. Yazan, hello, Yazan. Are you okay, Yazan?
How are you? Yeah, I'm good. How are you
Yeah.
all?
Yes, yeah, good. But what Mohammed has just been talking about is quite disturbing, isn't it? Because he's talking about a whole new level of atrocity. You know, like what we've been seeing for a whole year is really bad, and it seems to be getting worse rather than better.
And we don't get the full story because there's a news blackout. They allow news people into the country, so we only hear hearsay from what Mohammed's saying, for instance, and it's probably far more serious than we're led to believe. in the Western press because we don't have the information.
That's right, because even the BBC is not allowed to go in with their journalists, and the journalists who are in Gaza, hundreds of them have already been killed. Academics have been killed. So whoever is likely to have been recording or creating the evidence of the atrocities, they're targeted and they have been murdered, haven't they? Yeah. So Yazan, you were going to say something.
Yeah, actually talking about this topic, it's the most important thing to talk about right now in this period of time, actually, because the thing that's happening in Jabalia and even in Rafah, as you know, Rafah is evacuated completely, but the Israeli occupation is like making streets with traffic signs. So they are building settlements again in Gaza. So they have a very big project. It's not about war against Hamas or against whatever they are claiming. Actually, it's a war against humanity, against the people of Gaza and the people of Palestine in general. So, for example, in northern Gaza Strip, they are evacuating and displacing people from their homes in the worst ways ever. Like they are arresting males, they are killing them, making massacres in the places they are taking as a shelter, and you can say schools and even in the hospitals. So as you know, many doctors have been killed recently, like past 2 days. They were just in the hospital, and they are targeting we can say journalists in every aspect. So today, I guess they just posted a picture of 6 journalists in Gaza, and they just wrote about the picture wanted. They want them. They want to kill the rest of them. Actually, they have killed, like along the last year, more than 1 year. They have killed, like you can say, the majority of the journalists in Gaza, and they want the rest of them who are talking about Gaza, who are delivering the image to the other world. So actually, that's the worst thing about the war right now. It's being, I don't know, like it's what else than a massacre, or we can say genocide. It's more than that.
Yeah, it's targeted.
Yes.
So, hello, Anna, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Sorry for being late. I just had another meeting
That's
before
fine.
this.
Yeah, both Mohammed and Yazan, they've been talking about how in Gaza it's like with the genocide, it's getting worse rather than getting better over a year, and yes, and the fact that so many journalists, such a high percentage of journalists have already been killed, it's like making sure that there's no evidence of the atrocities, making sure there's no evidence, and that always happens during a genocide. Like it's like let's clear the slate, so that no one will be held accountable for this. And so, yeah, Chris was just saying it's targeted, which obviously it is. And so it's always the people who are most influential, the most skilled, the most powerful, they tend to be targeted first, because that's how you undermine a society. So it's about erosion of communities, erosion of societies. And so focusing on the creativity aspect of it. So there's a lot of the resilience. The resilience is like through finding ways around it, so that even though there's a media blackout, the media is not reporting, but still news is still coming out, so that's evidence of the creativity, isn't it? That regardless of, like, so many journalists, hundreds of journalists have been killed, but still the news is still coming out. So who's got like a comment about that? Like, how can that be amplified? How can these messages of truth and raising awareness, how can it be amplified apart from just simply talking about it on social media? Is there something else that can be done apart from that? Go ahead, Yazan.
Yeah, actually, journalism is so important to deliver the image to the world or to the presidents of these countries that have the power to stop the genocide. But actually, for me now, it doesn't matter because we've been like reporting since more than 1 year. We are just like picturing, filming, telling stories, doing anything we can ever do. So the world or the people outside, they know exactly, or they know exactly what is going on. The governments, they know what is going on. We need more than that. Actually, Gaza needs more. For example, we can see like the Arab people in the Arab countries, like nearby Gaza or Palestine in general, they're not doing what they have to do. Actually, talking is not enough. You have to talk to just to do more pressure on your government, because for example the nearest countries to Palestine, such as Egypt and Jordan, the people should do more than just talking. They have to do more pressure on the country, more we can say talking in the streets and taking the step to do that pressure, so the countries can stop dealing with Israel, or just stop delivering food or whatever they are giving to them, or at least just make the food and the medical supplies enters to Gaza, or enters to the needed people. So that's why, and even though it's not all about the Arab countries, we need also the Western countries, like, such as USA, for example, because a huge amount of taxes taken from people, they are giving back to Israel to just to arm Israel and to provide it with guns and rockets and whatever, just to kill the people inside Gaza. So people in USA should do that, or take that step to do the pressure to do more than that. I don't know what they can do, but actually talking about Gaza is not enough, unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely. So just talking about it is not enough. Protesting is not enough either, because as you know, students have been protesting in both the US, in England and other countries around the world, and even that has made no impact. And in a way, that's what has created this division of polarization, I suppose, in the world, because there are some countries like Ireland, like Spain, where the leaders have said, you know, like they believe like what's going on is atrocious and it needs to be stopped. But there are just a few countries in the West who are willing to do that. They stand out. You know, those countries that have taken a stand pro-Palestine, they stand out, and they're a minority.
Yes, the worst part is that these countries, they have the power to stop the genocide, but they chose to just see us being killed, and that's it. For example, the Gulf countries, they have the power of petrol or gas. So if they cut that gas, absolutely, the next day we will not have any war in Gaza. The same thing about USA. For example, if they stop their support to Israel by arming them and buying them rockets and we can say guns, the war will stop absolutely immediately. So they have the power, but actually we have to talk more and deliver our message to these governments, or to do the pressure.
And Anna, what about countries in in like Morocco and Algeria, for example? What about, you know, what's their position in all of this? Because we know the position of South Africa, for example. That's very, you know, South Africa is very is very supportive of the Palestinian cause, but we don't very often hear about the position of countries like in the North African.
I guess I can, I can speak about Algeria. Algeria is very pro-Palestine. Well, I guess the population is, and the government is too. But in most cases, historically, it is just with words. Actions are very limited. I think Algeria some time ago in the history, it made a decision where it allowed a lot of investment to come in from America and from Europe and from different countries that have might not be as pro-Palestine as them, and they still have a very they have a controlling controlling. They have a very tight control over our government and over our country's resources. So there's not really much that our country can do. It is still very tightly controlled by outside forces, and I think that's very similar to Morocco as well. Morocco is very highly dependent on, you know, on its tourist industry. So it's very difficult for them to really speak out, even though the population might be very pro-Palestine. But I definitely agree with what Yazan is saying, is that, you know, if these countries were to step up and to, you know, to stop providing oil or petrol, or even if the population were saying, okay, you know what, and I have seen it with some of my friends where they, you know, maybe boycott certain products from certain companies, and, you know, that could definitely trickle up. And it's yeah, I think what's going on with protesters, where you said, you know, protesting isn't enough, I think it really is just because protesting is, at the end of the day, it is just words. It is definitely, you know, getting a message out there, but it is just a verbal message. I think the next kind of course of action is to try and affect essentially shareholder value, and, you know, of these big companies, of these big countries. And when they stop seeing money flowing in, I think that's when they're going to see that, you know, they actually do need to make a change, because the people actually do have a lot of power here, and people aren't really using it right now. I think everybody, and you know, I try to do my best, but I'm sure that it's very difficult to try and, you know, boycott 100% of the products that come out from companies that support Israel or support, you know, what's going on in the Middle East. So it's difficult, and I think there's very few things in life where, you know, you can sit down and say that I really have no solution. And I think, you know, I'm trying very hard to think of a solution that could work out here, and it's it's very hard to think of one. But yeah, I think the only thing right now, I think, is for people to really stand up and try to have some kind of financial impact on the world. So people can really say, okay, yeah, these people actually do have a lot of power here, and we need to listen to what they say if we actually want them to be our customers and be our citizens. Yeah, I think that's kind of what I'd say about it.
Yeah, it is about power, and it's and as you say, one of the most political decisions we make is about where to spend our money.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, you know, just going on from that is not just where we spend our money, but you know, where we live, where we pay our taxes, which is definitely connected to money. But, you know, we as a people have a lot of responsibility and a lot of power in just what we do and with our time, and where we spend our money. And that's, you know, if we can do that as, you know, as a collective group, that has a lot of power, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir?
Okay, thank you, Ala. Actually, Ala has said the most important part of this. As economy is the most important, we can say, power we can use against this evil power. Of course, as we said, if the Gulf cut the petrol on Israel or USA, of course the war will end. So us spending our money, that affects the war, and the everything happens in the Middle East, actually. And according to the we can say North Africa countries, as Morocco and Algeria, of course, they are the first supporters to Palestine and to the resistance in general. But actually, it's more governmental, because the governments, they have deals with Israel. They have as a diplomat, more diplomat, actually, because they have the choice. For example, none of any Arab countries, they have for example, the ambassador of their countries in Israel, he stays there. None take him out of Afghanistan or the. So that's the action we need. We need diplomat actions.
Yeah, I think Bolivia was one of the first countries to pull their ambassador out, wasn't it? And so South American countries are very supportive as well. And it seems to be that those countries that have experienced colonization, they empathize more, you know, because it's this whole kind of the dynamics that are going on is about one group of people moving into another country and displacing the indigenous, and that's happened in the US. The indigenous people, so genocide was committed there. So many people were ruthlessly massacred. Australia, it happened there. New Zealand, it happened there. And, and we know in African countries that there was colonization there. And so, but South America as well. And so it's as though those countries who have experienced genocide in their history, they can recognize the patterns, whereas those countries who have been colonizing, like those who colonized the US or Canada or all of these countries, they justify what's going on. Go ahead, Ella.
I was going to say on that point, I mean, just to kind of counter it, is that I think if we look back in just recent history, one of the biggest genocides that happened was against the Jewish population in the Second World War. So, and I think I've even seen people that they have been through genocide, and their parents, just very recent history, were affected by some kind of genocidal action by a government or by a country. Yet they are still very for what Israel is doing. And I think the propaganda is very strong, by Israel in trying to kind of sway people into thinking that the majority of Gaza is a terrorist hub, for example. So the propaganda is still very strong, and people are very I think very ignorant to that, even if they have been affected by some genocide in their history. So it's very difficult. It's very nuanced, I think.
Yes, I've heard both sides. I've heard of lots of Holocaust survivors who are appalled at what's happening in their name. They're absolutely appalled. And then there are those who say never again. They say like whatever they're doing is simply to protect themselves from a repetition of what happened with the Holocaust. So there's both sides there. I've heard very vocal voices of Holocaust survivors who are totally pro-Palestine, and they believe that Zionism was always wrong. It was never going to be the solution. And so, there's two different. When we are traumatized, there can be a complex number of reactions. It's not always what we expect. We don't always have people who empathize. We can have people who become so numb to the pain of others that all they're focused on is protecting themselves. Because I heard on the news just yesterday, it was a Jewish woman, and she was being asked by the journalist, it's like, well, what do you think about all these thousands of people that have been killed over there? She said, it's them or us, and I choose us. Is that reaction, you see?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Chris, in terms of like the links of like what's going on now and what has gone on through colonization again and again and again, what for you are the similarities of like these patterns of destruction?
Well, I was just wanting to comment on what power Palestine has in this conflict. I mean, today, the Palestinian community in this country met Keir Starmer and the deputy leader of the Labour Party, the Labour Party in government, in Downing Street, and it was people who had lost loved ones in Palestine. It was a preliminary meeting, and although the British government said that they would try and help refugees and refugee families and make it possible for them, to come to a safe place. Obviously, they didn't commit themselves to a wider approach of banning arms sales and condemning Israel. But it's that kind of. Sorry, someone's on the phone to me.
Yeah, well,
so it's that kind of approach, because in America now there's a presidential election, and the parties have realized that Arab Americans have a vote, and Trump is trying to, he's talking to Saudi Arabia and trying to make himself into their good books, who were, funnily enough, Saudi Arabia probably back Israel. So there's a room to try and influence the Democratic Party, who will be more sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, and so it's probably the Palestinian community abroad that's going to help the Palestinians in Palestine. The United Nations are being targeted by the Israelis, which and they're trying to level the playing field and trying to make it more equal. But the Israelis see them as the enemy, but if they're attacking the United Nations, then again it's going to bring a reaction from the world. So there are seeds of hope there, in that in any human situation, if you follow a dialectical approach, which is if you've got action and reaction, or thesis and antithesis, whenever something happens, there's always the opposite always takes place. So it's not a unilinear situation, it's multilinear, and those are the things that the Palestinian community needs to rely on. So that will be my observation, but it doesn't get around the terrible suffering and the difficulties and the actual crimes that Israel is committing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mohammed, do you have anything to comment about what's being said? I'm not sure if Mohammed is still there.
Yes, I can hear, but I turned off my camera, so just hoping that the internet connection will be suitable for me. So actually, I wanna make an important comment from my side about what you said before about the woman, the Jewish woman, that she said it's like it's us or them, and she choose us. Like she choose their people. So it's not this war, like not war the current one. In general, like the war that started many years ago, before the 1948. It's not about Palestinian or Arabs or Muslims against Jews. My point is this, like happened or started by a people, a Zionist people, who choose the Jews as a religion, and then they make some change on it, so that can be connected with their beliefs as a Zionist, and then they start their story about having Palestine as their own land, and this is like what the God tells them, that you own this this land, and this story that be bigger and bigger after time, and then they make it real with the British army or the British government after the First World War finished, and what's right now we are living. What I'm trying to say is there's many Jews supporting us, and now because they are trying, the Zionist, the Israeli media, trying to make it as something against the Jews, so they will choose their lovely weapon, that anyone against Israel, anyone supporting the Palestinian, it's mean he's anti-Semitic. So it's not about Jews or Jews against Muslim or Palestinian or the opposite. It's something that they choose because they are, it's like a great or a good weapon nowadays, and they are trying just every time anyone supporting Palestine, so it's mean you are anti-Semitic, you have to go to jail, or you should be fired from your university, from your job, destroying your life. So we need to make the people know it's totally something different. It's not about Jews or anti-Semitic or anything like this. It's about people who own this land, and then another people, the Zionist people, who want to have their own land, and then they just choose the Palestinian land as it's like suitable with their story, their whatever they believe in. And unfortunately, not all the people know this story. So until now, they can successfully use their weapon, the anti-Semitic weapon, to anyone just against Israel or against their point of views.
Absolutely, yes, that's true. And this is why people like Norman Finkelstein, who is, his family survived the Holocaust, Norman Finkelstein, Miko Peled, who wrote The General's Son, Ilan Pappé, who is an Israeli scholar. It's people like that who are Israeli Jews, and they know what's going on. So, and they're sometimes criticized for being self-hating Jews. That's what they're called. They're called self-hating Jews. But when you listen to them and you read their books, it's not about being anti-Semitic. It's about knowing the truth. It's about understanding these patterns of the atrocities, and it's not about the religion. It's about oppression. That's what it's about. It's about oppression. Have you heard of them? Sometimes I wonder, because Norman Finkelstein, 10 years ago, he was in Gaza. He was helping in the hospitals in Gaza. Now he's very old, but he still makes it a point to speak as vocally as he can.
Yes, I used to watch some of his videos. If I'm not wrong, he's wearing a glasses, right? If that's the person, I guess he's Germany also, right?
No, he lives in the US. Norman Finkelstein, he lives in the US, and he is from Israel. Yeah. Could be wrong about that, but yeah, he's very, very vocal. And Miko Peled, Miko Peled, actually, his daughter was killed in Israel by a Palestinian suicide bomber, you see. And before that, because it was a suicide attack in a cafe. His daughter was in a cafe, and she was killed in this terrorist bomb blast. And it was when his daughter died, that's when, so up until then, he was part of the military. His father was a general in the military and whatever. But when his daughter died, that's when he started to look more deeply into what was going on. And then his eyes opened about the bigger context, rather than the what he had been led to believe, which was just one version of reality. When he looked, and so now he's been dedicating his life, like, for as long as I've known, more than 10, 20 years, in writing books and just kind of like talking about what's going on. But he obviously is not welcome back in Israel now. And Ilan Pappé is a scholar at a university here in England, in Bristol. He's, and so he's kind of lived through, like, having to do the military service and all of that. So he's very well aware of the brainwashing that goes on to make people believe that they need to defend themselves in such a ruthless way. But he's a scholar, he's an academic, he's written about the history, so he's very knowledgeable. And so the point of, like, mentioning those people is that when we listen to them, they are not anti-Semitic. They're not writing things which is propaganda, because they wouldn't risk their life to do that, but they are risking their lives.
There have been peace settlements in the past, but the architects usually get shot by one side or the other. I mean, was it Rabin who was shot by Israeli fanatic after he become to an agreement with Arafat? there's a kind of strong, there's a strong will among a lot of people to keep the conflict going. It serves their interests, and so there's a very brave man who will step forward and try to bring peace to the area. But so there has to be strong international pressure to bring the parties together. But at the moment, Israel is not doesn't want to have any truce because they're in a winning position, so they think they can go on winning, which is very short-sighted.
Yes, because the point of like this long enduring war is to make God, because I've heard again, like on the BBC News, which is always, it tends to be very biased and one-sided anyway, but on the news they were interviewing a Jewish politician, and she said, we want to make Gaza a hell so that they will all leave, because they wouldn't, to carry on living there would be a nightmare. So that is the strategy. The strategy is to create hell in Gaza so that everyone will want to leave, and that they will voluntarily leave. They won't even have to be forced to leave. They will. It's about creating that hell. That is the point of it all. I suppose. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, realistically speaking, there isn't really a place to live in Gaza anymore. I think there's maybe just a few towns or villages where living actually is possible. So they are succeeding in doing that. And realistically, if governments at the moment aren't trying to help the situation and trying to kind of stop the war, they're never going to fund a rebuild of Gaza. And Israel have the money, they have the financial backing from many governments. So they're in the best position really to rebuild Gaza for their people. And I think I linked to Daniela Weiss, who's very, very strong in her views of Gaza and trying to make sure that it becomes the new Israeli settlement. Sorry. So it's I think they definitely are succeeding, and it's a very big shame to see. I'm actually very disappointed in all the different countries and politicians around the world, because stuff like this really shouldn't happen. And I know it's just because there's no real financial reason for them to intervene. We spoke about it I think 4 or 5 weeks ago now when we were speaking and about the contrasts with Ukraine and Russia, and Russia trying to overtake trying to take Ukraine for themselves would give them controlling it would give them control over the gas pipelines and maybe some other exports that go from Ukraine into Europe. And obviously the Western world can't allow that because of the financial effects that it would have on the rest of the world. So they intervened and they fund Ukraine as much as they can. And unfortunately, that's just not the case with Gaza. It's just it's just nobody really has a financial interest in it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and earlier Mohammed was talking about Jabalia being reconstructed by settlers, right, Mohammed? I think that was just before you came onto the call.
Yes, exactly. This is what's happening right now, actually.
So they've already started to do what was the clear intention, to save spaces for themselves by the seaside in Gaza, in the beautiful kind of locations. It's like to reclaim those and reconstruct them. So it's about people being valued differently. So we know this, that that in terms of perceptions, people who are economically more powerful, like let's say in Ukraine, they seem to be economically more powerful. There's a tendency to think that those lives are worth more compared with, we often kind of like see conflicts in Sudan and Eritrea and Ethiopia, and it's like, well, because people don't have an economic interest, it's as though those people their lives are not valued as much because they are not economically as rich, and so how do people in Gaza, how do because last week or the week before, Mohammed, you were saying that most people in Gaza are highly educated, you know, and that high education on its own is not enough, is it? There needs to be value attached to that high level of education. So how do you express that level of high education as value in a way that the world sees it as value? Yasin, what do you think? Because I know, like, you're still studying, and obviously there's a reason that you're studying, because as you study more and more, the value that you can add to your own life and to the lives of others will increase with your education, but not by education on its own. There needs to be something, there needs to be the action in relation to the education that results in something tangible that people can see as valuable, right?
Okay, first of all, let's mention that Palestine, especially Gaza, has the lowest percentage of uneducated people in the Middle East. So I guess, or as we all know, that the bad conditions can make the hardest people around the world. So the generation before us, like we can say, my father's generation, they were born in hard conditions because their parents, they just came from Nakba, they came from their homelands to another land that they are foreign to this land, so they had to build themselves from zero. So for example, my parents, my uncles, they lived in that conditions, and our grandparents, they wanted our children to be the best people ever. Why? Because they wanted them to rebuild their countries, get back to their homes, and that is the only weapon we have. Because Palestinians have been always, they did not have a huge power or a huge, I can say, a lot of weapons or guns. They just have their education. That is our weapon. That is our gun. So as you see around the world, this is our gun. We can fight by talking, by learning, by being educated. For example, Dr. Ghassan Abu Sitta, he's now in the UK. He's like a great doctor, like one of the top doctors in the world, our surgeon, we can say. He just came to Gaza and helped there in during the war, and he left before the crossing was closed. So he benefited his country. So according to the value, of course, being well educated give you a huge value. For example, people in Gaza, they have to use this value just to try to we can say avoid the bad conditions, or to live with it until it's done. Why? Because, for example, I have my neighbor. Of course, we will have some some drops, some issues, some problems. Being well educated will make me just forgive my neighbor, forgive my uncle, my cousin, and that's it. So we can live peacefully until we, or at least we understand that we are in bad conditions. It's abnormal. So we have to be kind with each other. We have to know what is wrong and what is right for ourselves and for our country. For example, not educated, or anybody is not educated, of course he will harm his country, he will harm his people. Because if he just give a bad or information for the Israeli occupation, of course he will cause a huge number of we can say victims in Gaza. Because if he just told about someone in some building, of course the Israeli occupation, it will be targeting this house and killing civilians. So being educated, it will give you the value that you know what is right and what is wrong. You know, we can say your restrictions or your borders. So you will know how to deal with yourself, with your neighbors, with your family, especially in this bad conditions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So go ahead, Ali. You might as well say that. Yeah, I can see you've put a message in the chat. You might as well just say it.
Yeah, thanks. So what you were just saying, Yazan, thank you. It reminded me of a quote where, maybe it's not completely relevant, but You know, the quote was, "The child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth." And I think that that's very relevant here because, you know, these people that, you know, Israel are kicking out of Gaza and, you know, doing this genocide against, you know, some of them unfortunately will die, as Israel seems to want, but some others will grow up and their children will have to bear the consequences of the genocide that their parents were faced with. And you never know what's going to happen. I think, you know, people are going to be angry about this for a very long time, and I think the consequences are going to be decades long. And yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of anger, and that anger is going to come out in a lot of different ways. Yeah, exactly, Yazan.
Yeah.
I
So,
think
go ahead.
levels of literacy are important in, as Yazan says, it helps you to make the case. It helps you to produce the argument, and things don't get lost then, because you can make the case, you can write it down and make it permanent. And so literacy is very important. And it's interesting that the Jews, when they regarded themselves as a displaced person, tended to be at a higher literacy level than the society they were living in. So it's very important, and a point well made.
Yeah, sure, of course. Actually, the Israeli occupation is paying like billions of dollars just to pass its propaganda and on the media, we can say, to just spread whatever news they want. And that is our, we can say, it's our mission to just be educated and well educated. That is our power, just to fight against these, we can say, fake news. And actually, inside Gaza Strip or inside the displacement, we can say, people have been well educated, and they should have a vision to just know what news they can take, or what news they can be careful when they are hearing this news. They have to be careful about the fake news, because of course that is the most thing can affect the community inside Gaza, of course, or especially in this hard condition. Because for example, if any fake news spread inside the Gaza Strip, of course people will be we can say kind of crazy. They will not know how to do. Like the simplest example is we can say the Israeli occupation sends us messages to just evacuate one area or one village. For example, if a fake news or someone is joking and send this message to one person, of course, if this person is not well educated, or or if he's not aware enough, of course he will be panicked and he will panic everyone around him, and that will lead to we can say a huge mess around the Gaza or the Gaza Strip. So we have to gain our own propaganda to fight the Israelis one, and keeping in mind that is their or they own the world, we can say. Every time I overthink this, I end up with the same conclusion, that Israel and USA, they have the power of the whole world, and USA is giving all of these powers in the world just to give it to Israel, just to fight Palestine and Gaza. For example, they have the sources of economy, they have the sources of media, the huge, we can say, newspapers and channels, CNN, New York Times, or any one of them. They have them to just pass their propaganda, to just, we can say, adopt the Israeli perspectives. So they want the whole world to accept their propaganda and their lies. So that is our mission, to just tell the truth and to fight them by the same weapon.
And I suppose when you talk about the Phoenix Rising, that the Phoenix Rising is about emerging from the ashes of that propaganda and, you know, staying in alignment with the truth. That requires a lot of creativity, and not just for people who are in Palestine or in Gaza, that requires a lot of creativity for those of us who are in safe countries, because we see this propaganda, but we don't always have the language to be able to articulate that, this just isn't right. That requires a lot of high level education to be able to make the arguments, like Chris was saying, like make the arguments to persuade people that what they are hearing is has been fabricated, or it's biased, or it's distorted, or it's generalized, or it's just simply fake, I suppose.
The one of the things that we contend with in this country, and it's quite it's quite widespread, and it's what you might call the philosophy of the uneducated, and that's the conspiracy theory. And if you look at politics in America, Donald Trump is followed by what are being called low information people. That is, people who haven't a high education. And as he said, ignorance is good. I like ignorance, he said. So he appeals to people who spend their lives with conspiracy theories, which have evidence, and they make links to a coherent story, but it's a false narrative, and he calls it fake news, and he calls the swamp, which is the government, which is there to try and do the poor people down. And so you have demagogues who rely on conspiracy theories, and so you have to meet that with the truth. It's not easy, because you're dealing with closed minds, and you can't argue with a closed mind. So we have to find ways around that.
And what you call a closed mind is, like, very often it's a mind that is full of fear.
Yeah.
It's full of fear. And so when somebody is full of fear, they do close, they close, and they will put their trust in an authority that they believe, well, I will trust this person because I don't know the answers for myself. And in a way, it's kind of like the lazy person's way out, isn't it? It's like a laziness. It's like, I don't know the answers, but I will trust this person. And so that person could be Trump, it could be somebody else, it could be Kamala Harris. It's like you put your trust in that third party because something doesn't feel quite right, but you're too lazy to find out for yourself. So you will, put your trust in, sometimes it's not actually the truth, it is just simply propaganda. Any other comments? Go ahead, Yazan.
Yeah, actually, talking about closed-minded people, I'm proud actually this war just give more information, and it made actually difference in the people's mind, we can say, in the whole world, because people used to have we can say wrong idea about what is happening in Gaza, or what's happening in the Middle East in general. They have a misunderstanding. They were misled actually. And for me, actually, the closed-minded people who are still following their governments, and you can say following their governments blindly without thinking. And we have a lot of them in the Middle East, actually, especially in the Gulf countries, because they just follow what their king or their prince, what he says exactly. If he supports Israel, if he supports genocide, if he supports the war in Sudan or in Yemen or whatever, they just support their king without thinking it twice. And that is the actually, it made me feel empathy toward them, actually, because like everything happening in the world, the Western world, actually, they are protesting against their governments. They are knowing the truth now. So what is happening in Gaza now, what's happening in Sudan, and even in Ukraine and Russia, made us think it twice and three times and maybe more about the whole world, about what is true and what is wrong, because not everything we see, even if it was the largest channel in the world, or the biggest newspaper in the world, or the president of the biggest state in the world, actually I don't have to believe him or to believe these claims. Actually, I have my mind, I have what I see and what I hear, and I should have my own opinion and fight for this.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. So we're just coming to a close. So Mohammed, do you have anything else to say before we go?
Actually, after more than a year in this genocide, all my ideas is like gone. I don't have any specific thing to say about, like, for the world in general. Actually, I'm sorry, but I don't have anything I can say for the world, if I can say. In these days, actually, I'm just like lost the hope. I really lost the hope that this war will finish soon. I used to have some hope. This will end soon. This will end soon. But nowadays, I don't have any hope for this. I don't have any actually. I don't have any idea to say to the world, to say about the situation right now. So for this time, sorry, but I don't have any point to say.
So we will meet again next week, inshallah, right? And hopefully there will be some good news, you know.
Inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah. I'm expecting a couple of new friends who you haven't met next week, so that is something to look forward to. Yeah, one of them, like, she focuses on creativity as well, so that'll be interesting. So a new person for you to meet. And there's somebody from LinkedIn. She is actually in Gaza and she's making a lot of videos, and she's created this group called Talent Gaza. Have you heard of her? She's in Gaza, and so she said she would like to join next week. So
What's her name? Maybe I know her.
I will introduce you to her on LinkedIn. Yeah, she seems very optimistic, you know, and I've seen her videos and I really liked her videos. So I asked her if she would like to join us, and she said yes. So hopefully she'll be with us next week as well.
Inshallah.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, everyone. See you next week. Have a good week.
Have a good evening. See you.
Thank you. Bye bye. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Same to you, Mohammed.